Good day, fellas. I hope you're ready for your daily dose of skill. And today we are going to be a data nerds, fellas. We are going to take a look into the stats and we are going to see how matchmaking is looking like nowadays from the data that we got from the index page by people who are using the index mod. And by the way, quick information, you will be able to soon check out matchmaking of September, of November, of December, of January, whatever. You will be able to compare month by month basis how matchmaking is looking like from perspective of the player, obviously if you are using our modification, right? I am very glad that this tool is available, and now we can see, is the 2.0 matchmaking actually better or is it worse than it was before, right? Because I really want to highlight that lately for the past 2 to 3 weeks I was struggling with the game mentally quite heavily, you know? For people, it may look very simple that you are clicking the stream button and you are playing the game always happy. Unfortunately, this is not how the things are looking like, and this is not how the game works, right? I am same like you. I can be frustrated by the game, I can get angry on the game, or I can be happy as a teenager girl while jumping on someone from the cliff and ramming someone to death, right? The point being is I was truly thinking the reasons why am I not so happy with the game at this point in time. And maybe matchmaking is the reason why am I not so happy and why I'm getting frustrated. Or some people may say maybe free-to-play is the reason. Yes, fellas, you are correct, free-to-play. Oh, yoy, how hard it is to play. That's why we are playing for 61 or 62% win ratio, because it's so damn hard, right? That's besides the point. Let's dig into the stats and let's see what do we have. So boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to cover the player perspective coverage, and we are going to take a look into the data, which is which we can see we have close to 19 million battles, 19 million games, fellas. Absolutely insanity. Before World of Tanks 2.0 we have 6.7 million games, and after 2.0 we have 12,150,000 games, right? So pretty much over 12 million battles, right? And let's see how matchmaking is looking like overall. And once again, I really want to highlight that this tool is going to be accessible very soon for you, and you will be able to compare this global data month by month, and you can compare your data as well whenever you are playing the game, and you can see how the things are looking like. I think this is absolutely amazing, and this is absolutely glorious situation, and hopefully you will get plenty of the use. But now let's take a look into the things. So for a tier 5, matchmaking is actually looking better than it was before World of Tanks 2.0. Hear me out, why am I saying so? We can clearly see that nowadays you are getting significantly less +2 matchmaking. So being a tier 5, you are seeing tier 7s less often, and you are seeing the tier 6s just about the same time, maybe a tiny touch more often than it was before back in the day, right? Before World of Tanks 2.0. You can see +1 -1 matchmaking. That would mean tier 6 on top, tier 4 in the bottom. It's even more here, and way more often you are getting the same tier battles, or tiny touch less, -1 matchmaking. So way less of the time you are seeing the tier 4s, right? But combining the numbers, over 50% of the time in this situation, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, you are either fighting against the same vehicles or you are fighting against the lower tier. So this is actually a pretty good number in my opinion. Nowadays we have like what, 52% being the same tier or top tier, and in the past it used to be only 44%. So definitely improvement for a tier 5. Very nice, congratulations. Let's see from my personal data, whenever I played with my free-to-play account, right? We are sitting on the casual 61% win ratio being free-to-play, and by rolling the tanks, what we are going to play with. So it looks pretty nice. And the data is very similar. 5.6% I am playing against the tier 7s, right? 42% of the time I am playing against the tier 6s, which is completely fine. 37% of the time I am fighting against the same tier, which is a bit below average, but this is close enough. And 14%, actually 15% of the time or close to that, we are fighting against -2, -1 matchmaking, so beating the tier 4s. Everything is looking good, fellas. There is nothing to complain about the tier 5, everything is fine. Let's swiftly move to the tier 6, and we can see the tier 6 situation is definitely better than it was before, but we can see that the tier 6s are not as often top tier. Anyways, let's take a look into this. In the past, you used to play 15% of the times against the tier 8s being tier 6. That's absolutely disgusting. So Wargaming managed to remove this threefold, if we can say so. 3 times less often you are seeing the +2 matchmaking. So honestly, where the lower tiers goes, there is nothing to complain about. That's absolutely ridiculous. And we can see from our own personal data that it is even better than it looks on the paper, at least from the games that we have played, right? 4.2 compared to the 5.3. That's great, absolutely amazing. How about +1 matchmaking? In the past, you used to be fighting against the tier 7s 34% of the time. Now it's 43% of the time. And now it definitely looks significantly worse, speaking how often you are top tier. But in the same time, I would say it is significantly better for a player to fight against +1 matchmaking than +2 matchmaking, but that's only me, right? So here is definitely worse. Looking into the same tier battles definitely increased by quite a margin. -1 matchmaking decreased, so less often you are slapping the tier 5s being a tier 6 yourself, and -2 matchmaking seeing the tier 4s, it's pretty much impossible. 0.7%, it's very, very, very rare. And looking into the real life data, I am even more lucky than that. I am seeing -2 matchmaking 2.2% of the time, so I would say I am that lucky mother trucker, right? But once again, tier 6 matchmaking doesn't really look that bad, and keep this in mind, this is many millions of the games, right? We are comparing. Moving on next, tier 7. Tier 7, we can see that the +2 matchmaking decreased by 2%, or instead of getting the 13% of the time +2 matchmaking, now you are getting it only 11% of the time. But look at this beauty, fellas. +1 matchmaking increased by pretty much quite a margin, by 6%. In the past, we used to have +1, -1 matchmaking, so whenever you are tier 7, you play against the tier 8s and tier 6s. It decreased 4 times, that's quite crazy. And same battles increased by quite a margin, right? Pretty much by the double. You are meeting the tier 7s more often. -1 matchmaking is still looking pretty okay, right? And -2 matchmaking decreased 3 times. So the chance for you to see the tier 5s, good luck with that. How our data is looking like, speaking about the personal data, I am a bit more lucky than that for sure. I'm seeing -2 matchmaking a bit more often than paper would recommend or paper would suggest. But yeah, everything is okay. Now, if we are taking everything as at the face value, how the things are looking like, and we are focusing on 2 graphs specifically. If we are focusing on the +1, +2 matchmaking, so that means you are always bottom tier, right? It is over 50% of the time that you are bottom tier, and this is pretty disgusting if you would ask me. I think this is quite bad, and in the same time, I have a feeling that it is even worse than it was before. Maybe that's only me, but this is how it feels like to me. Yeah, unfortunate. Other than that, you are top tier. or you are having advantage, pretty much it's less than 50% of the time, and tier 7 matchmaking doesn't look the finest, fellas. Not gonna lie, but you think the tier 7 matchmaking is bad? Let's take a look into the tier 8 and let's see what do we have over there. And tier 8 is the matchmaking which we had a lot of discussions with our community in on the live streams, right? And people are saying that the tier 8 matchmaking is feeling like a big pile of poo-poo, right? And I feel you, the tier 8 matchmaking, definitely whenever I play tier 8s, I feel like I'm a bottom tier quite often. So let's see how it looks like, shall we? Looking into the tier 8, matchmaking against the tier 10s decreased slightly, but matchmaking against the tier 9s, being a tier 8, increased definitely way more than this one decreased. After that, we have 3% of the battles plus 1 minus 1. We have like pretty much same, maybe even lower amount of the times we are playing against the tier 8s overall, and tiny touch more often we are playing against the tier 7s or tier 6s is pretty much unseen 1% of the time. So that pretty much means whenever you are clicking into the battle, you are less... You are clicking into the battle 100 times, you are going to get -2 matchmaking once. From my perspective, from what I have seen playing on the free-to-play account, I have never seen the matchmaking against the tier 6s. And from my perspective, the numbers are very, very, very similar what Wargaming is suggesting and how my luck is looking like. Maybe I'm a bit even more lucky. If we would take a look into my main account, which we can take a look into the stats from the literally from the September, right? We played gazillion of the tanks, we played a lot. And we can see that we have never seen -2 matchmaking, and we are gangbanged by the tier 10s quite often. And this is pretty annoying thing. I think that World of Tanks would be so much better if we would not meet the tier +2 or -2, and I think the game would be significantly better to balance. So what that means it looks pretty sad for what we can see over there, fellas. I truly believe that the tier 8 matchmaking is feeling definitely the worst, at least from my perspective, even though data is not suggesting that. I mean, think about it from this perspective, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. If we are taking a look into how often you are facing the higher tier than you are, and this is 48, 49% you are being a bottom tier. You know how often you are being a top tier, so that means you are meeting the lower tiers 11% of the time or 12% of the time. This is 4 times less likely that you are going to be a top tier. Obviously, if you are calculating same tier matchmaking, this looks a bit better, but still quite disappointing, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, let's move to the tier 9 and let's see how the tier 9 is looking like compared to how it used to look like before World of Tanks 2.0. So let's start from this. Tier 9 got slapped quite heavily, unfortunately, because of the Tier 11 introduction, for obvious reasons. So we can see clearly that Tier 11 is meeting Tier 7s less often than it was before. And looking into my main account data, we can see that I am definitely way more lucky than average, which is very, very good. Personally, I feel great, but someone is getting slapped, that's for sure, right? Very, 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 very interesting thing. Wow, 3% of the time it is suggesting, and I'm more than twice lucky. Definitely rigged matchmaking. 27% of the time on my main account I am playing against the -1, and in global average is definitely different. Global average is 35%, and I am unlucky in this department. So luck is probably averaging it out, right? After that, the same tier matchmaking is pretty much once in 50 games, so you are rarely seeing the plus only tier 9 matchmaking, which we can see this is quite an interesting stuff. We can see clearly that +1 -1 matchmaking just moved down a little bit, which would be kind of a good thing, and +1 matchmaking moved down quite a bit, which would be a good thing. But now we have a different bracket of the matchmaking. So what that means before you could not meet a tier 11, and now 1 in 6 games you are playing against the tier 11s, or at least this is how the average is looking like. And looking into my stats, 15% of the time over there, yeah, I am around that level as well. Absolutely insanity, fellas. So the tier 9 matchmaking, at least for whenever I am looking into the stats, it definitely looks like it is a bit worse than it was before, but still manageable, I would say. Let's see how the tier 10s are looking like. The tier 10 matchmaking, back in the day, 10% of the time you were against the tier 8s. Nowadays it's 5%, so twice less often. The tier 10 matchmaking, back in the day, 20% of the times you were meeting only tier 9s. Nowadays, 8% of the time, so 2.5% decrease or something like that. And in the past, you used to meet the same tier 70% of the time, but now it's 40% of the time. And at this point in time, obviously, 40% of the games you are meeting the tier 11 tanks while you are playing with a tier 10. And my personal data is showcasing very similar results. 36% versus 39% and 50% being the same tier. Yeah, I am even more unlucky to see the lower tiers, right? -2 matchmaking 3.4% of the time. This is definitely below average, and seeing -1%, 8% of the times, this is actually kind of all right, right? So, fellas, by seeing the numbers, by seeing the data, by seeing the things like this, which is, once again, we are not taking those numbers from the air, you can clearly see that we have quite a bit of the data, and that's what we are working on, where the index page goes. But now, hear me out. I really want to highlight one very important thing. What we are going to work on next, where the matchmaking data goes. First of all, we are going to allow people to compare the matchmaking data depending on the month, right? You can do comparison, or you can just simply take, let's say, matchmaking data and combine everything together. So from the 2.0, it is this data is going to be visible. This is one thing. The second thing is, I must admit that we are working on the part 2 of this video, and this is going to be 1 to 3 to 15 matchmaking. You get the point what I'm saying. 4, 5, 6 to 15 matchmaking, 7, 8, 9 to 15 matchmaking. So how the things are looking like, and how games are ending up most often, and maybe we can take a look into the battle timer as well. Did the games become a bit quicker and a bit faster, right? I think many of you data nerds, if you are enjoying that, you are going to enjoy this, and you will be able to play with this yourself to compare your personal data and to compare that with a global average. So if you are not using the index much, please, I would highly recommend to download it, and you will be contributing to all of this information, and you will have access yourself whenever it is going to be available for public. And in the end of the day, to answer my own question, why the game was so not enjoyable for me lately, because I truly feel like I was struggling mentally quite a bit over past couple of weeks. I think that uncertainty at this point in time is significantly more than it was before, just of the sheer amount of the tourists that we have in the game. That means the game is very unpredictable. Some games can last 15 minutes, and some games will end up in 2 minutes because 2 top tiers decide to go and YOLO in front. I think this is the thing which is annoying me quite a lot, and you know, I can see the vibes of the people whenever they are coming to the stream as well, and I definitely can tell you that I am not alone feeling this way. But either way, it is how it is. That's what we have. If you have any thoughts, please put them down in the comment section down below, and I can't wait to read your thoughts of all of this, what you have seen, and how do you feel about overall the data? Is it looking like matchmaking is better on the paper? Because in certain situations for a lower tiers it definitely is, but for a higher tiers it is a bit different situation, right? At least it looks like from my point of view. Anyways, love you all. Thank you very much for watching. I very, very much appreciate you, and part 2 will come probably in January, maybe on December, depending how fast we are going to prepare the data for all of this. That being said, thank you, and see you very, very soon. Skill is out for today. Peace.